I have a question for you. What would make a king give up his throne, to give up his power? Well, I will tell you it's not what you think it is, and it's something that you and I probably do every single day. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I want to share with you a little story that I learned in history, and it is one of my favorites. It didn't take place too long ago, just in the 1900s, but it is one of my favorites, and I love it, not necessarily for the story, but because of what it taught me, and I can't wait to share it with you. This is the story of the abdication of Edward VIII, King of England. So this guy has a very long, confusing name, and I'm going to try to keep it as clear as possible. So his real name is Edward Albert Christian George Andrew Patrick David. It is very long. Once he receives the title of king, he becomes Edward VIII. Prior to that, he's known as David. That's the name he goes by. That's what his friends call him. That's what his family calls him. Now, David was born on the 23rd of June, 1894. He was the firstborn son of King George V and Queen Mary. So for David, it seemed as if royalty, leadership, and the crown were always in his future. His grandfather, at the time of his birth, was the current king, Edward VII, his namesake. His grandmother was Queen Victoria, and his uncle was Nicholas Romanov II, the Tsar of Russia. And his father was the next in line for the throne. And on May 6, 1910, Edward VII, his grandfather, dies, leaving George V, his father, as King of England. That meant that David was next in line for the throne. But you have to see, World War I was very hard on monarchs. And by the end of World War I, 3 of the great monarchies had fallen: Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia. David's own uncle, Nicholas Romanov II of Russia, the Tsar of Russia, and his entire family were brutally murdered. And to make things worse, post-World War I, the world really didn't like Germany, and the Treaty of Versailles, Germany definitely got the rough end of the stick, and the monarchs were not liked very well either because they were mostly German. King George V and his entire family, they had the last name of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, a very German name. And once again, the monarchies are falling all across the world, and so King George kind of takes it upon himself to rebrand the monarchy. And they took on the British name of Windsor that they still have today. So King George V begins to kind of reshape the crown, reshape the monarchy, and kind of get a better public perspective. And he does this by kind of being out in the public eye more and more. And he has his 2 sons, David and Albert, who goes by Bertie. He has them in the spotlight, and the people loved them. The war was over. They weren't focusing on the war anymore, so they began to focus on these 2 great-looking guys that were out there socializing, and they loved them. As Edward's popularity soared, he found himself at the level of stardom kind of experienced by today's top celebrities. Now, David really enjoyed the fame and the partying and the women that came with that, even so much that he and his brother began multiple affairs with married women. When their father, the king, finds out about this, he tells them, look, you've got to put an end to this. You must stop acting like boys and become the men that will one day lead this country. Now, Bertie, the youngest, did as he was told, and he ended the affair and ended up getting married shortly after. David did not. This made King George V very upset. One son had listened and the other had not. Listen to what he says about both of them in a letter that he wrote to Bertie, his youngest son. You have always been so ready to listen to any advice and to agree with my opinions about people and things. I feel as if we have always gotten on very well together. Very different to dear David. So you could feel some tension there, and King George was very upset about his son's refusal to heed his advice and end the affairs that he was having. Now, knowing that he was at the end of his life and that his stubborn son was very soon to take the crown and wear the crown, the king voiced his concerns to his prime minister at the time. And he says, "After I'm dead, the boy will ruin himself within 12 months. And I cannot tell you how prophetic those words were. On January the 20th, 1936, King George V died, and the very next day, Edward, the Prince of Wales, or David, as he's been known up to this point, is ascended to the throne as King Edward VIII. I'll refer to him as Edward from here on out. Now, Edward continues in his rebellions, so much so that he refuses to stand on the balcony as he was declared the next king. Instead, he kind of breaks tradition and remains inside, listening to the announcement of his own ascension from a window, and by his side stood Wallis Simpson. So Wallis Simpson is an American socialite. She's raised in Baltimore and was the wife of her second husband, Ernest Aldrich Simpson, but the new love interest of King Edward VIII. So Wallis is in the process of divorcing her second husband when King Edward VIII makes it very publicly known that he intends to marry her, making her his equal. Now, as king, he's head of the Church of England, a church which at the time did not condone the marriage to a divorcee. Not only that, she was still married at this point. Edward VIII found himself faced with fierce opposition from his family and from the government. The Prime Minister at the time explained to Edward that if he did marry Wallis, the government would then have to resign, causing a ruling crisis in the country. He could not marry the woman and remain king. And only 11 months after his ascension, before he had even reached his own coronation, he would have to make the decision between marrying the forbidden love of his life or following the duty that he had and been called upon since his birth. King Edward VIII was given the choice to break off the immoral relationship with Wallis Simpson or be forced to step down as king. What did he do? On December the 10th, 1936, King Edward VIII, he signs the instruments of abdication in the presence of Prince Albert, or Bertie, as he's been known, the Duke of York, and Bertie would be the next in line for the throne. And on the following evening, December 11th, 1936, he addressed his subjects in a worldwide radio broadcast, willingly stripping himself of his title of king. Now, I believe that every story has a lesson, and when I heard this story that took place in history, and I actually went to England and I kind of experienced this and walked through and saw some of the history and saw some of the statues that were there, this story spoke to the core of who I am. And so this next part is for you, men. I'm a guy, I know this, and I'm speaking from experience because I'm a man. I don't know if this applies to women, but I know that it applies to myself. And so I want to ask you this question. How many men have been stripped of their title as king? How many men have willingly abdicated their roles as kings or priests or warriors in their own family, in their business, in their relationships, in their finances? You see, a lot of times men will let women, they'll let them lead in scripture or in prayer in their household. They'll be the last to want to pray. We will abdicate the lead role in raising our children because we're busy, we're doing a business, whatever. Maybe that's just for the women to do. We'll abdicate sometimes the role of leadership in control in our finances. We abdicate the future of our family, the direction we're going, the legacy that we're leaving. We abdicate our dream of whatever it is that we want to create, sometimes for a 9-to-5, building someone else's dream. I think that men, we have become too passive in many ways. And when I say we, I'm talking about myself included. And I know that over the past, this is a journey that I have not yet completed. And I heard someone say once that this totally describes me. They said they were a student of the game of life, always wanting to know how to play it better. And that is totally me. I'm always looking at a situation and trying to figure out how to make it better. How can I be stronger? How can I do this faster? How can I be more efficient in what I'm doing? And in the way that I've been doing it, is it the best way to do it? Now, I didn't always used to be that way. There was a switch, probably around the time I heard this story, where this really switched in me. You see, before, I was just a product of whatever environment I was put in. If I was in a great environment, then I would be great. If I was in a bad environment, I would be awful and my life would be falling apart. And I would kind of sit there in whatever situation that I was in, always waiting, anticipating something else would happen. In those bad situations, I was waiting, anticipating, come on, God, do something. In those good situations, I was afraid and nervous of what was going to take place next. And I always was just this product of my environment, always waiting, anticipating what was going to come next, and not really feeling like I was in control of it. I wasn't in control of it. I was just letting things happen to me. Again, I love history. I love English history. I love the kings and the queens and the stories that took place there. And a few years ago, while I was doing some research, I discovered my last name, King Edward, and I began looking at it and trying to figure out what it stood for and what it meant. And it was a title that was it was given to people. It was a title that was bestowed upon them, and it was bestowed upon people with that lived their life with the nobility of a king. And something clicked in me when I heard that. It spoke to my core, just like this story did. And I realized, you know what? I've got to live my life with the nobility of a king. I am called to do something great. I am a conqueror. I'm not a product of my environment. I'm called to conquer my environment. You see, conquerors take what's theirs. They fight for what they want. They conquer their environments. You look at kings of the past, they either conquered a weaker king before them, or they inherited a throne and had to defend it. And those that didn't defend it ended up losing it. And you may be thinking about this in your own life and like, what is he talking about, thrones? Well, this could apply in your business, this could apply in your relationship, this could apply in your finances, but it also can apply up here. It can apply in your brain, in your heart, in your core of who you are. I think that a lot of guys, we do this. I heard John Eldridge say this in his book, Wild at Heart. He's talking about the fall of man, and he's talking about what takes place in the Garden of Eden. And as we know, Adam and Eve, they eat the forbidden fruit, and then they realize that they're naked, and they cover up themselves. They find the fig leaves and cover themselves up. And he calls this the fig leaf syndrome, because a lot of times we are afraid. We're afraid of being exposed, afraid of being not enough. We're afraid of not being enough to get to wherever it is we want to go. We're called to be here, but what if I'm not good enough to get there? What if I'm not the man I'm supposed to, what if I'm not a good enough man? What if I'm not a good enough father? What if I'm not a good enough husband? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not strong enough? What if I'm not fast enough? What if I'm not good enough? He calls that your fig leaf, being exposed. We don't want our nakedness to be revealed. So what we do is we either, we abdicate that area completely, and we're just, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pray for dinner. I might stumble through my words. I'm not going to know the scripture as well as so and so I'm not going to say anything. Or, I'm not going to be as good in the finances as I could be, so I'm just going to let so and so take care of it. I'm going to let my wife take care of it, or I'm just going to wait and see what happens. That's a terrible idea. We're afraid, we're insecure, we feel like we're going to be exposed in that area if we fail. So what if you fail? Like, failing is a part of life. You have to fail to get somewhere. So I say all this to say, in my own life, I had to look back at all of the areas of my life and figure out where it was that I was lacking, and where I was not taking control of the situation. What was sitting on the thrones of these areas in my life, in the finances, in the, being the priest of my household, in my businesses, in my relationships, in my marriage, in being a father. Like, what areas am I not sitting on the throne? And what is sitting on the throne there? Perhaps it's fear, perhaps it's anxiety, perhaps it's anger, hatred towards someone else. Like, what is sitting there, and what has taken your place in that situation? So my question to you is, what areas in your life have you abdicated the throne to? What have you given up? What are you just kind of letting happen? You're not taking control of it. You're not, maybe it's your health, maybe it's your finances. I've said all of these things, but what areas in your life have you abdicated the throne to? What is sitting there, and what are you willing to do about it? Because I know I had to ask myself that, and I had to fight for each and every one of these areas in my life, and I'm still fighting for them today. What areas in your life have you abdicated the throne to, and what are you willing to do about it? Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I hope that this story spoke to you like it did me, and I hope that you got something out of it. I love sharing this kind of stuff with you. and I cannot wait to share what I have planned in the future with you. So give me a like, thumbs up, subscribe to this video, whatever. Comment down below. Let me know how this video spoke to you, what you thought about it, what you got out of it. Maybe even tell me what are some of your favorite stories in history. What are your favorite things to learn about as you grew up? Perhaps you're not a history person. That's fine. But I just want to thank you so much for watching this video and spending the time with me today. And I cannot wait to see you next time.